Hello and welcome to End Goals, an LCMS Youth Ministry podcast. I'm host Reverend Mark Kiesling, and I'm with DCE Joanna Shaw. We are here to bring parents, church workers, and lay leaders discussions and resources to help your youth ministry meet its end goal, which is young people who are disciples of Jesus Christ for life. Today we are talking about our YouthLead program.
We have talked about in previous episodes the value of young leaders and congregations. It's a part of our 7 practices of healthy youth ministry, something we saw in our research. So it's not a surprise that over many episodes, when we ask people we're interviewing about meaningful moments for them in youth ministry, many of those that we've interviewed, if you've been listening along, we're giving stories about how they had leadership roles in their congregation as teenagers and young adults. We can see both in our research and anecdotally that having young leaders empowered in your congregation is incredibly important. And it's our experience as well as people who were empowered to do leadership roles when we were young people as well.
I loved hearing those stories. I think the 2 things that always stuck out to me was the confidence that was given, and in that confidence it was that the young people got to see this place in the church for them for today and then to the future too. And then I think sometimes it probably goes without being said, but then those relationships that were built through that, sometimes peer to peer, but sometimes peer with other adults. And so that mentoring that took place, those conversations, those learnings, just how the Holy Spirit used all that interaction. I think it was really cool to see, and I loved hearing those stories. And so talking about YouthLead, there's a history to that. 40 years ago, LCMS Youth Ministry started Lutheran Youth Fellowship to help train high school age teens as leaders in the church. And we continue to do this, and we only recently rebranded as YouthLead to, again, look at all those great things that had happened with Lutheran Youth Fellowship and to really bring some focus to it. And so we have an annual training, which is a leadership training facilitated by teens on our leadership team. And that event makes use of leadership resources developed to give teens the tools to mature in their faith and become leaders in their congregations, and also to reach out to their peers with the love of Christ. As that was one thing we heard a lot from people coming to the trainings, is to say, we look around our peers and see that they don't know Jesus, or they don't have a connection with the church, maybe like previous generations did. And we're sometimes that lifeline with the gospel into their lives. And we want to be able to be equipped to do that. And so that's something we've taken with us. And I guess some of the things that stand out to me and just being a part of that in the years I've been blessed to be either seeing Terry Dittmer and his leadership with it, and how the program has evolved over the years, is I love seeing that a change they made a few years ago was to go to some video-based curriculum. And what that enabled was, again, the teaching to take place by maybe some content experts, but then allowed the young people on our executive team and others that attend to have more time in leadership roles and leading, facilitating discussion, learning from one another. And I have loved to see how our young leaders have latched onto that and asked for that opportunity to do that. And I'm also always encouraged too. I love hearing from so many of the participants who come who are starting to understand in their congregations, in their families, how they are servant leaders and the many vocations in which God has called them to already as students and athletes and sons and daughters and brothers and sisters, and how they're seeing how God is using them in the place where they're at to share the gospel and to encourage the saints in their location. So I love seeing that through the YouthLead program.
Yeah, Terry Dittmer and then Jessica Bordelot, leaders who have led the program in the past, and certainly, even into today, really have done a fantastic job of taking young people and putting them up front, giving them everything they need to be successful as leaders up front, which is such a beautiful example. But then also having adults who come to the event who really are there to have those young people's backs, to love them, to give them the things that they need to support them, both at the event and then back home. So for those of you who maybe have never heard of Lutheran Youth Fellowship or YouthLead before, maybe you've heard it, you don't really know kind of what it is, here are just a few basics for you. So the program is designed for high school youth. And we host this annual leadership training in St. Louis that runs kind of from a Thursday evening to Sunday at lunchtime. And it's retreat style, so we bring them in, we go to a retreat center, which really helps us to dig in, to build some really cool community. And then adults bring, and sometimes they come at the onus of a district. Mm-hmm. So districts can advocate to bring some young people, or sometimes individual congregations will bring either individual young people or small groups of young people who they want to have further training. So they come to this event, and then we have resourcing that happens on other parts of the year as well. But that's kind of the big thing that happens for us every year.
And then we've really kind of taken the overall training and really given it two foci. And first, we teach a discipleship curriculum designed to benefit the young person and to train them to teach curriculum back home. And so that's one of the key outcomes that can come from the training, is to take that back. And like you said, Juliana, we get both examples that goes back into the districts, so maybe at district events or some other places, or back to their congregation to teach it with their friends back there. And so they can have, again, that chance to take what they learn and teach it to others. This curriculum, though, is also available for everyone, and it's free on the Youth eSource, and that's available after the event. Now, the second thing that we also do is a series of sessions designed to develop leadership skills just kind of in general. So to understand how God has made them, the gifts God's given to them, and how they use those. So we want them to go back home knowing more about God-given strengths and how to lead in a Christ-centered way in many different vocations and really contexts that they have back home.
Yeah, so we use things like strength finders, which is a great tool for us to identify some strengths, but we also talk very heavily about vocation. We give them some time to talk about potentially church work. We talk about just communication. We talk about spiritual practices. We explore spiritual practices, so we spend time in God's Word together and doing different pieces like that. So we really want to think about leadership not just in one specific way, but pretty holistically. And I love hearing the stories of success. I've only been around for a little while and have been able to really see some of our young people who have attended the event or who even served on our leadership team. We call it our executive team, who have gone on to do some really cool things, both in the church. I just got to invite one of our previous executive team members to come and speak as a breakout speaker at National Lutheran Youth Workers Conference this summer, which was very cool. But also to see leaders in that program go on to use that in other kinds of settings. So we have a young man who served on our executive team who then gained a leadership skills that he was able to then turn around and use as a leader in his university, in his pre-med program. And so really talks about connecting how what he did at YouthLead then really impacted and gave him some skills to share the gospel in other vocations and in other ways.
Yeah, I've loved seeing kind of that part of that applying it when they go back home too. So I know we have some districts who utilize it kind of in a more formal, like they go back and run a retreat themselves back in the district. And so it's kind of this replicating thing of YouthLead back home. And so they get to take on that leadership, as well as a district took their those that had come to St. Louis and been trained and kind of took them on the road. And so it's kind of cool. They went from maybe to some smaller, more rural congregations where they maybe felt a little bit more isolated and didn't have as many young people, and went and worshiped with some young people in that context, and then did the training with them on like for Sunday school Bible class time. And that was like really neat for those relationships to get formed. And so that those young people too knew that there was a district leadership and other peers praying for them and connecting with them. And then it developed relationships for district events and other things down the road. So love it when kids take those steps into reaching out into their own church body, showing the love of Jesus and the care they have for other young people. So love those success stories that come out of YouthLead and LYF.
Yeah, it's so great. As we were looking at evaluating this program over the summer, which is something that we did before we rebranded to YouthLead, inviting people into that conversation who have leadership roles across our synod in a variety of different places, and finding out that many of them had been connected to Lutheran Youth Fellowship in the past and in different ways, whether it was in their district specifically or whether that was something they were a part of a national event. It's very neat to be able to go back and we can look at pictures, and we've been doing kind of a throwback Thursday on our Facebook page where we talk to participants and alumni and that kind of thing, and going back and looking at like how many young people over the course of 40 years have become a part of this, have gone through this training, have been equipped, and how that's benefited them not just now for the moment, but into the future as well.
Absolutely.
And change the trajectory of how they saw themselves and how they lived out their faith through the gift of the Holy Spirit in other places. So to share more about the program, we actually recorded a few of our young people who we talked about them in our leadership team. We call them our executive team. That's a group of 5 young people who are elected by their peers every 3 years at that national training event. And then they serve a 3-year term where they're mentored, they're trained, they're able to lead large parts of the program every year at the national event. And then they help at the National Youth Gathering, and they are going to be at National this summer. So we wanted them to share some of their specific insights into the value of raising up young leaders in particular. So we're going to introduce them now. Well, welcome to End Goals Podcast. I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves, maybe share your name, the region that you represent, and then something about your vocations.
I'm Allison Graves. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I represent the Great Lakes region, and I'm currently going to school at Lipscomb University studying to become a dietitian.
My name is Joanna Shaw. I'm from Millersville, Missouri, and I represent the Central region. My vocations are, I'm a PK, so shout out to all those pastor kids out there, and I'm also a freshman at Concordia University Irvine, studying to become a Lutheran teacher.
Fantastic. Well, we're so glad you're here. You guys have done this training several times now, but what is one thing you are looking forward to for the training that we'll have in July?
I'm really looking forward to being in Houston. We usually have this event in St. Louis. It'll be a bit of an adjustment, but I'm really excited to see what it's like in a new city. I'm also really excited to get to see a lot of the old faces and meet a lot of the new people that are going to show up, as well as get to reconnect with the executive team because we haven't seen each other in over a year, and that's really sad.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Allie. Just really looking forward to being back with my people, back having fellowship face-to-face, just super awesome. I very much am looking forward to just learning more about my God and my relationship to Him as His people. And I'm also just looking forward to being in Houston, as that's where the National Youth Gathering is going to be, and I'm excited to just be there and check it out.
It's a unique opportunity we have to be able to have this event and all that comes with it in the city where we're going to have the gathering. And so we get a chance to prepare young leaders for their congregations, but also a little bit for the gathering. I'm always so amazed at the relationships that are built in just the few days that we got together. I know you guys have a lot of passion, and we hear that from participants often, is that they get to meet other young people who they build these great relationships with, and they can carry those out, not just for that weekend, but over time. If someone's wondering about why they should bring a teen to YouthLead, why would you recommend that they join us?
I think that you should totally recommend and even just be in prayer about coming to YouthLead. YouthLead is just a place where we cultivate ambassadors of Christ, and teens just get hands-on practice leading and developing communication skills, all in the context of learning and serving in the name of Jesus Christ, which is just something that's super unique and that you don't really find in a lot of other places. And YouthLead is definitely has that as their strong suit. And I know I've grown as a leader there. And something that's super cool even about going to YouthLead is that you don't have to have this extroverted sort of personality. We are able to cultivate and find that leader in you. And there's leaders of all forms and shapes. And I think that's super important to remember in coming here, is that you have valuable characteristics and strengths, and we're here to just cultivate those and grow you as a leader, as someone who is able to be a light to Christ and a light to others in leadership, wherever you're at in life.
I love that one of the things that we do is strength finders, which is this idea of everybody has strengths that they're leading out of. And those are, we focus on those as God-given gifts. And so it's really fun to see just the variety of different gifts that are in the room and how they can all be used to serve. Allie, how about you? What do you think you would recommend for people? Why do you recommend YouthLead?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me is that Strength Finders test. I didn't know a lot about how I could be a leader coming from the perspective as an introvert. So it was really neat for me to get to see the ways that I can still be a leader despite the fact that I maybe not am such a woo, as you could say. That's one of the strengths in the test. So that was really neat for me to see how I could still be a voice in the church, and be a voice of God in my community, in my church, wherever that may be.
I love that one of the unique things about this event is that it's led primarily by youth. I'm curious, and I'm going to put you guys a little on the spot here. Why do you think that's so valuable to have youth that are leading youth when we come to this kind of event?
Yeah, I think it's really important for youth to be able to see other youth in leadership roles, mostly because like our voice matters, our opinion matters, and coming from a little bit more of a conservative church, I guess, I didn't always feel like I was being heard. And so when I got to YouthLead for the first time, I just thought it was so amazing to see these people who were only a few years older than me, who were taking that foot forward and just taking charge. And that was really inspiring to me, that I could make a change in the church, and help raise up other people.
YouthLead is just such a unique experience, truthfully. And I know that for me, it's just so special to be led by someone who I know is coming and understands like the world right where I'm at. I think it's super easy for you to sit in a classroom or even to sit in like a different type of conference setting where there's a church worker who's like super knowledgeable, but grew up like in different circumstances. And obviously like they know what they're talking about and they have great insight, but it's super cool to just be having discussions and being led by someone who you know like has the exact same experiences as you. Something else that is super, super unique and super cool about having peers who are around your age leading you is that you see that is something you're able to do, and it's not something that's necessarily modeled in the church all the time. So to be able to come somewhere and see people your age leading is just a huge encouragement specifically as an encouragement to me in my own life, where I was able to be like, man, like I can be involved and I do have this potential. But then like on the flip side, even getting the opportunity at YouthLead to get up and lead myself, it wasn't just like the executive team that was leading. You actually get hands-on experience and opportunities to lead as a participant. And that was just super encouraging to do that and be so supportive by that environment and the leaders that were there who were coming and who were right in the same boat with me. But even to just stand up and lead and realize that like, man, I have this potential and this is something that I can do and I can be a leader.
Yeah, both really fantastic thoughts. I love the environment that we're able to create where you are led by peers. And I do think that empowers young people to go back to their congregations and feel like I can do this. I just watched somebody else do it, and I can lead as well. And I love, we do have adults who come, right? It's not just teenagers who are there. Adults who are there, and they are so supportive, and they're to cheer you guys on, and to care for you guys and for the young people that came with them. So it is a really unique piece of this that I really love and appreciate watching. Maybe come back as you guys are young leaders in the church. You talk about how YouthLead has empowered you in your Christ-like leadership in the church. Why is it important for young leaders to be involved in their congregations?
I guess my thought process on this one is that one day we will be the leaders in the church. Some people who go to our event, they're going to be pastors, they're going to be DCEs, even lay workers. And it's important for us to understand the Bible and understand how to minister to other people's needs. So I just think it's a really neat opportunity for us to get kind of like a heads up or like a foot in the race before we actually get there.
Yeah, I would say that it's so important for young leaders to be involved in their congregations because the Spirit is active inside of them, and they are able because the Spirit enables them. And I think that's something that we overlook so often, is that there is not a huge clear distinction between like the work a high school or a college student can do, besides obviously like with time you learn more and you have more ability to grow in the Word and in your understanding of God. But the Spirit is there and the Spirit is working, and He's the one enabling them to do the work. And I think that's super important to acknowledge, and also just understand that they have the ability and capacity to learn at that age to be active and be a leader in the church. And like how special of an opportunity is it really to get youth involved when they're young, so that we can see just like this church as a whole come together and just work, and even just to ensure the future of the church, and people who are dedicated and who want to serve because they have a heart of service. And I know Ali just talked about youth being the future of the church, but I feel very strongly that youth are the church now. And that's something that I feel like is just super valuable. The experiences and the energy that they can bring to the church, the things that they can share and talk about, and the witnesses they can be to this world right now because they understand this world and they're living in it. And I feel like that can be a huge asset to our churches right now.
Great. Absolutely.
So as you can hear, YouthLead has equipped teens to develop and use their leadership skills as they serve Christ within their congregations and communities. The program offers resources and training to equip teens to lead and mentor each other. And it's a great way to build confidence as Christ-centered leaders and build a community of young people and adults to support them. But you can do that even outside of YouthLead. You can go back to our podcast on opportunities to serve and lead for more on how you can do that in your congregation.
And if you want your youth to have the experience of YouthLead, we would love for you to join us. This year's a little different in that the pandemic meant that we could not have our typical event happening in the spring, but we've moved it to July 11th through the 14th in Houston, Texas, in conjunction with the National Lutheran Youth Workers Conference. Now, this is going to function a little bit differently. It's not going to be the retreat. You're still going to, but we're going to have our young people who will spend the bulk of their day with us, running through much of the things that we would do in YouthLead. And then they will get a chance to spend their mornings and evenings with you, maybe even perhaps thinking about how they can be a leader specifically at the National Youth Gathering. So while this year's going to be a little different, we already have our normal dates and times, location set for March of 2022. So we'll return back to that normal schedule, and you can find out more about that here pretty soon. So keep an eye out for that on both our Facebook page and on our website. So some closing questions for you to consider. How are you equipping and mentoring young people to lead in your congregation?
How can you get to know your young leaders to play to the strength God has given them?
And then how are you helping young leaders to feel confident and setting them up for success? We continue to keep you in our prayers as you mentor, train, and support young leaders in the church. While this can seem like an ongoing task and one that can be challenging at times, please know that you're not just doing it for that young person right now in your church, but you're doing it for every church where they will serve and lead in the future. And really equipping young people to be leaders both now and throughout their lives as they're disciples of Jesus Christ.
End Goals Podcast is a production of LCMS Youth Ministry and KFUO Radio. To find out more about LCMS Youth Ministry or to find links to resources mentioned, go to kfuo.org/youthministry. Thank you for listening and caring for the young people of our church.